Yellowstone's ground looks solid. Inches beneath it, water reaches 250 degrees. A structural engineer stepped 1 foot off a boardwalk and lost his leg. A certified wilderness first responder climbed past a locked gate and lost both of his. A geochemist who published research on crust stability crossed a barrier and broke through knee-deep into scalding water. The warnings were everywhere. Not one of them was enough. Derek Hall knew the ground was dangerous. He'd spent his career as a structural engineer, calculating loads and stress points, trusting numbers and his own judgment. But at Norris Geyser Basin, 1 step off the boardwalk was all it took. He wanted a better angle for a photo. The crust beneath his boot looked solid, the same pale gray as the path, but it fractured in an instant. His leg plunged through, knee-deep, into water measured at 237 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to strip flesh in seconds. The shock was immediate and total. Rangers rushed to help, but the damage had already spread. 11 days in a Salt Lake City burn unit followed, skin grafts and surgeries that couldn't undo what boiling water had done in a heartbeat. Surgeons removed Derek's leg below the knee. The boardwalk, the warnings, the posted signs, none of it mattered after that single misstep, and all the expertise in the world couldn't put it back once it broke. Carter Bryn had a following, 340,000 people waiting for his next move, his next selfie, his next risk. At Grand Prismatic Spring, he wasn't just another tourist with a phone. He was a travel creator, and the pressure to deliver something bolder than the last post was real. Bryn stepped off the boardwalk and walked toward the eastern edge, where the colors shift from deep blue to a thin, steaming orange. With his camera rolling, he edged closer to the fragile surface, the crust underfoot barely thicker than a pane of glass. The video's caption landed like a dare, getting the shot they do not want you to get. That line spread fast, echoing through comment sections and reaction videos. But in the moment, Bryn's foot punched through the microbial mat, sinking to his ankle in water hot enough to cause instant burns. He yanked his leg free, but the damage was done. Later, doctors would graft new skin over the scalded tissue. The shot was posted, shared, and dissected, but the reward came at a price, one that lingered long after the likes faded. Ranger David Kowalski stands at the edge of the boardwalk, repeating the same warning dozens of times each day. He estimates the number, 40, sometimes 60, delivered to families, hikers, influencers, and scientists alike. His words rarely change, but the faces do. Some visitors nod, eyes wide, gripping the rail as if the ground might open. Those aren't the ones that keep him up at night. It's the confident ones, people who stride past the signs, recite facts about geology, or joke that they've hiked in worse. They're certain they understand the risks. Kowalski has watched them step off the path for a shortcut or a photo, convinced that knowledge alone keeps them safe. The ones who worry me most, he says, are the ones who already think they know everything they need to. For him, the lesson is simple. Yellowstone doesn't care how smart you are. Out here, humility is the difference between a close call and a catastrophe. Paul Gart's credentials should have been enough. Wilderness first responder, trained for emergencies most people can't imagine. But at the trailhead to Sulphur Springs, a heavy steel gate blocked the way, chained and padlocked with a sign that left no room for doubt. Seasonal hazard, do not enter. Gart sized up the barrier, weighed his options, and decided to climb over. The air was sharp with minerals, the ground steaming in places, but he pressed on, 1.3 miles past the locked gate, boots crunching over ground that looked like any other high country trail. Each step took him farther from the safety of the main path and deeper into terrain shaped by boiling water and shifting crusts. Beneath the surface, heat from the magma chamber turned groundwater into a scalding reservoir. The crust above, cycled by months of freeze and thaw, was barely thicker than a dinner plate. Gart moved fast, confident in his footing, until the earth beneath him gave way. In a blink, he dropped hip-deep into water, measured at 198 degrees Fahrenheit. The pain was instant and overwhelming. He managed to haul himself out, but the burns were catastrophic. Emergency crews reached him hours later, but the damage was irreversible. Both legs, below the knee, had to be amputated. The locked gate, the warning, the distance, none of it stopped him. Training couldn't change the physics of Yellowstone's crust. Gart's story is a reminder that experience doesn't grant immunity, and that the park's barriers aren't just suggestions. They're the last line between curiosity and catastrophe. Nathaniel Vance was known for his speed on the trail, not for hesitation. When his border collie slipped into the Firehole River at the thermal inflow junction, instinct took over. He dove in, determined to pull the dog from the current. But the river at that spot was no ordinary waterway. Where hot spring runoff meets cold river flow, the temperature can swing from near boiling to icy in a matter of feet. The hydraulic current caught Vance and swept him 340 meters downstream, dragging him through pockets of scalding and frigid water. Rescue teams found him shivering and semi-conscious on the bank. At the hospital, doctors diagnosed him with hypothermic shock, a condition more often linked to freezing lakes than a place famous for steam and heat. Yet here, sudden exposure to extreme temperature shifts triggered what clinicians call paradoxical vascular collapse. The body, overwhelmed by heat, dilates blood vessels so rapidly that blood pressure plummets, mimicking the effects of deep cold. Vance survived, but the rescue impulse that launched him into the river nearly cost him his life. Yellowstone's water, whether boiling or bone-chilling, doesn't play by the rules most people expect. Tanya Ostro had spent years in the lab and the field, dissecting the secrets of Yellowstone's hydrothermal crusts. Her papers mapped out the chemistry and mechanics, how a crust just centimeters thick could look solid, yet hide a reservoir of near-boiling water. She understood the dangers better than most. But on a summer morning at Sapphire Pool, knowledge and instinct collided. Ostro crossed the barrier, scanning the surface for signs of weakness, reading the terrain as she always had. The crust seemed stable, the color and texture matching what her research had marked as safe. She stepped forward. The ground gave way. In an instant, her leg plunged knee-deep into scalding water, the shock tearing through any sense of control. Park rangers pulled her out before the burns could turn deadly. In the review that followed, Ostro's words cut through the technical jargon more sharply than any data point. I stopped being a scientist the moment I needed to be one. Years of expertise, undone by a single misjudgment. The pool, the crust, the warning signs, none of it had changed. Only her certainty had. Colin and Derek Marsh were ironworkers, used to noise and danger, but Mud Volcano offered neither. They settled into a shallow depression, waiting for a ride, talking quietly as the afternoon stretched on. Beneath their boots, the ground seemed stable, just mud and mineral crust, nothing unusual. But the air was changing. Hydrogen sulfide, heavier than oxygen, pooled around them, invisible and silent. For the first few minutes, the rotten egg smell lingered. They joked about it, the way people do when a bad odor drifts by. Then, without warning, the smell vanished. At concentrations above 100 parts per million, hydrogen sulfide doesn't just overwhelm the senses, it paralyzes the olfactory nerve, making the gas undetectable. The brothers never realized the warning had disappeared. After 40 minutes, Colin slumped over. Derek followed, both unconscious before help arrived. Rangers called for an airlift, but the damage was already done. The exposure left both men with permanent neurological injuries. In this landscape, not every threat announces itself. Sometimes the most dangerous hazards are the ones you can't see, can't smell, and can't escape once you've stayed too long. Yellowstone's crust still hides boiling danger inches below your feet. Every year, new visitors test its limits, convinced rules don't apply to them. As Carter Bryn warned, nature doesn't care what you think you know. The ground remembers. Will we? Share your thoughts below.